The morning Sarah left, the house changed its sound. It was not silent, but the silence felt heavier, like the walls were listening. Emily stood near the front window, arms folded, watching her mother's car roll down the quiet suburban street lined with tall trees and parked trucks. The sky was pale gray and the air felt unfinished, as if something important had been paused. Emily was 22, grown enough to live on her own, yet still tied to this house by habits, memories, and a need for comfort she did not like to admit. Sarah waved once before turning the corner. Emily waved back, then slowly dropped her hand. 2 weeks. That was all. Still, the thought of it made her chest feel tight. Her mother had always been the center of the home, the one who kept things moving, who filled space with small talks and warm routines. Without her, the house felt like a stage after the lights went out. Behind Emily, a chair moved softly. Mark stood a few steps away, holding a mug of coffee. He did not rush to speak. He never did. He had learned patience early in life, and it showed in the way he moved, calm and careful, like he was always aware of the space around him. He had been part of Emily's life for 6 years, ever since Sarah married him after a long, painful divorce. Mark never tried to replace Emily's real father. He simply stayed present. She called, Mark said gently. She landed safely. Emily nodded without turning. That's good. The words felt small, but they were all she could manage. Mark nodded too, as if that was enough. He took a slow sip of his coffee and glanced toward the hallway, giving Emily space. That was something he always did. He never pushed. He never stepped too close. Emily turned from the window and walked toward the kitchen. The smell of toast still lingered in the air. Sarah had made breakfast before leaving, laughing too loudly, trying to hide her nerves about the trip. Emily could still hear her voice in the room. That memory made her throat tight. Mark stood by the counter, wiping a clean plate that did not need wiping. He looked tired but calm. At 45, he carried himself with quiet strength. His hair was starting to gray at the edges, and his eyes always looked like they were thinking about something deeper than the moment. So he said lightly, "Big plans today?" Emily shrugged. "Interview at noon." "Then I don't know." "Well," Mark replied, "good luck with the interview. Thanks." They stood there, unsure how to move forward now that the usual rhythm was gone. Emily poured herself coffee, even though she didn't really want it. She leaned against the counter, staring into the dark liquid. This was the first time she and Mark would be alone together for more than a day since he married her mother. Before, there were always friends, visits, or short trips. Never this. Never 2 weeks of shared space and quiet evenings. Emily had always kept a safe distance from him. Not because he gave her a reason to fear him, but because she believed distance was the right thing. He was her stepfather. That title came with rules, even if no one spoke them out loud. Mark respected those rules. He knocked before entering rooms. He never asked personal questions unless Emily offered answers. When friends came over, he stayed in the background. He cared without claiming space. That morning, after breakfast, Emily went upstairs to get ready. As she closed her bedroom door, she leaned against it for a moment and let out a slow breath. The quiet pressed in on her. She suddenly felt older than her years, like life was waiting for her to catch up. Downstairs, Mark cleaned the kitchen and checked his watch. He had taken time off work for the week. Sarah had asked him to keep an eye on Emily, not because she needed supervision, but because she worried about her daughter feeling alone. Mark had promised he would be there, whatever that meant, later. Emily came down dressed for her interview, nervous energy written all over her face. Mark noticed immediately. "You'll do fine," he said, offering a small smile. Emily hesitated. "What if I don't?" "Then it wasn't the right place," he replied. "Something better will come." She studied his face, searching for doubt, but found none. For a brief moment, she felt lighter. The day moved quickly. Emily left for the interview. Mark worked quietly in the garage, fixing a loose shelf and organizing tools. The house remained still, but not empty. It was aware of them, of the two lives moving around each other. When Emily returned later that afternoon, her shoulders were slumped. Mark looked up from the couch. "How did it go?" he asked. She shook her head. "Not great." He nodded, accepting her answer without pushing. "Dinner will be ready in a bit." Emily went to her room again, dropped her bag, and sat on the edge of her bed. The disappointment hit harder than she expected. She stared at the wall, blinking back tears. She hated feeling weak. She hated feeling like she was stuck. Downstairs, Mark cooked quietly. He thought about Sarah, hoped she was safe, and wondered how Emily was holding up. He knew this house felt different without her mother. He knew transitions were hard. He also knew his place. When Emily came down for dinner, they ate together at the table, exchanging small talk about the weather and traffic. Nothing deep. Nothing dangerous. Yet something unspoken sat between them. It's like a question waiting for the right time. That night, as Emily lay in bed listening to the sound of the house settling, she realized something had shifted. Not in a dramatic way, but quietly. Like a door opening just a little. She did not know what would come next, but she knew this was only the beginning. The storm arrived without warning, thick clouds rolling in by late afternoon, turning the sky dark and restless. Emily had been pacing the living room all day, checking her phone, refreshing her email, waiting for something to change. The interview rejection came in one short message, polite, final. She read it once. Then again, feeling the hope drain out of her chest. Outside, thunder cracked, sharp and sudden, making the windows shake. Emily stepped onto the front porch, not caring that the air was cold. Rain started to fall in heavy drops, soaking the steps, darkening the wood. She sat down, pulling her knees close, staring at the yard that now looked blurred and distant. Everything felt too quiet inside her, then too loud all at once. She tried to stay calm, but the pressure of the last few days pressed down hard. Inside, Mark heard the thunder and noticed the front door open. He looked out and saw Emily sitting there unmoving, rain touching her shoulders. He grabbed a towel from the hallway closet and walked out slowly, careful not to startle her. "Hey," he said softly. Emily didn't answer. She kept staring ahead, eyes fixed on nothing. Mark placed the towel gently beside her. Not over her shoulders, not touching her, just close enough to be offered. He sat a step away, leaving space between them. "Storm came fast," he said. Emily let out a short breath. "Everything does." Mark waited. The rain grew louder. Water ran down the steps, forming small streams. After a long moment, Emily picked up the towel and wrapped it around herself. "I didn't get the job," she said quietly. Mark nodded once. "I'm sorry." That was all he said at first. No advice, no fixing. Just understanding. Emily's voice cracked. "I feel stupid for thinking I would." "You're not," Mark replied. "Trying doesn't make you foolish." She finally turned to look at him. His face was calm, steady, not full of pity. That helped more than she expected. The rain soaked through her shoes. Mark stood and held out his hand not to pull her up, but to guide her inside. Emily hesitated, then accepted. They went back into the house, the door closing behind them, cutting off the sound of the storm. Mark handed her a mug of tea and pointed toward the couch. Emily sat curling into one corner, the towel still around her shoulders. The lights were dim, the room warm. Thunder rolled again, distant now. "I don't know what I'm doing," Emily said suddenly. "Everyone else seems to have it figured out." Mark sat in the chair across from her. "Most people don't," he said. "They just hide it better." Emily laughed softly, then stopped. Tears filled her eyes, surprising her. She wiped them away quickly, embarrassed. "It's okay," Mark said. "You don't have to be strong today." That sentence broke something open inside her. The tears came faster, quiet but steady. She looked down, ashamed of crying in front of him. Mark didn't move closer. He didn't reach out. He stayed where he was, letting her feel without pressure. "I feel like I'm behind," Emily said. "Like I missed something important." "You're early," Mark replied. "Life isn't a race." She looked at him again, really looked this time. He wasn't judging her. He wasn't uncomfortable. He was just there. They talked for a long time. About small things at first, about the interview, about her fears of ending up stuck, about how strange the house felt without her mother. Mark listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, his words were careful, steady, never crossing into territory that felt wrong. He told her about his own failed plans when he was younger, about paths he thought were certain that disappeared overnight. He didn't make it about himself. He used his past only to remind her she wasn't alone. Hours passed. The storm faded. Night settled over the house. Emily felt something unfamiliar grow in the quiet space between sentences. It wasn't desire, not yet. It was comfort deep and unexpected. Being seen without being judged. Being heard without being fixed. When Mark finally stood, he checked the clock. "It's late," he said. "You should get some rest." Emily nodded. "Thank you for listening." "Any time," he said simply as she walked toward the stairs. She paused. "Mark," he looked up. "I'm glad you're here." His expression softened. "So am I." Emily went to her room, closed the door, and leaned against it, heart racing for reasons she didn't fully understand. She replayed the evening in her mind, the calm of his voice, the way he gave her space instead of answers. Downstairs, Mark turned off the lights and locked the door. He stood in the dark kitchen for a moment longer than necessary, staring at the rain-streaked window. He felt the shift, too. He recognized it immediately, and it worried him. He reminded himself who he was, why he was there, what mattered most. The house needed balance, not confusion. Care, not chaos. As Emily lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, she realized something important had changed. Not because of what Mark had done physically, but because of what he had offered emotionally. He had listened, and in that listening, something dangerous and beautiful had quietly begun. The next few days moved faster than Emily expected. Morning turned into evening without warning, and the house settled into a new rhythm. They shared meals, exchanged small jokes, and spoke more openly than before. Nothing crossed a line, yet everything felt closer. Too close. Emily noticed it in the way she waited for Mark's voice, in how silence no longer felt empty but full of meaning. One evening, she cooked dinner for the first time since her mother left. The food was simple, but she tried harder than usual. Mark thanked her, smiled, and sat at the table. The light above them was soft, casting long shadows on the walls. Emily talked about a book she was reading, about places she wanted to visit one day. Mark listened, nodding, asking thoughtful questions. His attention felt steady, almost grounding. After dinner, they sat in the living room. The television stayed off. Outside, the air was calm, the storm long gone. Emily sat on one end of the couch, Mark on the other. The space between them felt smaller than before, though neither had moved. "I've been thinking," Emily said, her voice quiet but clear, "about everything." Mark didn't look away. "Me too." She hesitated, then continued. "I don't understand what I'm feeling, and that scares me." Mark took a slow breath. He had felt this moment coming. He had tried to keep things light, respectful, safe. But emotions don't always follow rules. "Feelings can be confusing," he said carefully, "especially when life feels uncertain." Emily turned toward him. "Do you ever feel like you're standing on the edge of something, and you don't know if stepping forward will help or hurt?" Mark stood up, not abruptly, not in fear, but with intention. He walked a few steps away, creating distance instead of closing it. That movement said more than words could. "Yes," he said. "And that's when you stop and think about who else might fall if you step wrong." Emily's heart sank, but she understood. "You mean my mom?" "And you," Mark replied. "And her. And this family." The room felt heavier, but clearer. Emily looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers together. "I don't want to do anything wrong," she said. "Neither do I," Mark said firmly. "That's why this matters." He sat back down, but this time in the chair across from her, not on the couch. The space returned solid and real. "I care about you," he continued. But caring doesn't mean crossing lines. Some lines exist to protect people, not trap them. Emily swallowed hard. I think I needed to hear that. Mark nodded. Sometimes we mistake comfort for something else. That doesn't make it bad. It just means we have to be honest about it. Silence followed, but it wasn't awkward. It was thoughtful. Emily felt a mix of relief and disappointment settle in her chest. She realized how close she had come to confusing warmth with something deeper. Something dangerous. Later that night, Emily went to her room earlier than usual. She lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation. It hurt, but it also made sense. She respected Mark more now than she had before. Downstairs, Mark paced the living room, hands in his pockets. He felt the weight of responsibility press down on him. He loved Sarah. He cared about Emily, and he knew that caring sometimes meant stepping back, even when emotions pulled forward. The next day, Sarah called to say she would be coming home sooner than planned. Emily felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Mark smiled and said that was good news. And it was. That afternoon, Emily packed a small bag. She decided to stay with a friend for a few days, to give herself space to clear her thoughts. When she told Mark, he didn't question her. That's a good idea, he said. Take care of yourself. At the door, Emily paused. Thank you, she said. For being honest. Mark met her eyes. Thank you for understanding. When the door closed behind her, the house felt quiet again, but this time it felt balanced. Something had been tested and held strong. As Emily walked down the driveway, she knew this moment would stay with her. Not as a regret, but as a lesson. Some connections are meant to guide, not change direction. And sometimes, the strongest thing someone can do is choose what not to do. The morning Sarah returned, the house felt alive again. The smell of her perfume lingered in the hallway, blending with the scent of fresh coffee Mark had brewed. Emily was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table, her mug warming her hands. She had barely slept, thinking about the past 2 weeks, the storm, the quiet evenings, the conversations with Mark that had left her heart full but confused. Sarah's laughter floated down the stairs, bright and familiar, breaking the stillness in a way that made Emily both happy and strangely melancholy. Mark opened the front door before Emily could, greeting Sarah with a warm smile and a hug. Welcome back, he said. Sarah returned the hug, tired but cheerful. It's good to be home, she replied. Emily watched them for a moment, noticing how natural Mark's gestures were, how calm he looked. There was no tension, no awkwardness, just kindness, patience, and genuine care. She felt a small ache, a longing for something unspoken that had grown quietly inside her over the past days. Breakfast was a lively affair. Sarah moved around the kitchen, unpacking groceries and talking about her trip. Emily tried to match her mother's energy. But her mind drifted to the evenings she had shared with Mark, the quiet talks. The comfort of his presence, the lessons she had learned about boundaries, care, and respect. Mark noticed her distraction but said nothing. Instead, he poured coffee for both women, moving with the same calm attentiveness he always carried. After breakfast, the house returned to its usual rhythm. Sarah unpacked, washed clothes, and caught up on chores. Emily helped when she could. Though her mind wandered to memories of the stormy days and nights, Mark joined in, silently working beside her, showing the same patience and care he had always shown. Emily noticed the way he never overstepped, never acted on the confusing warmth that had passed between them. He had been a steady presence, guiding without taking, supporting without imposing. That realization made her respect him even more later in the day. Sarah and Mark went to the store together, leaving Emily alone for a few hours. She walked through the rooms of the house, noticing little things she had missed: the pictures on the walls, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the quiet corners where sunlight hit just right. She realized that during her mother's absence, she had learned to see the house differently. She had learned to see people differently. Mark's presence had changed the space, not in ways that were dramatic, but in subtle, steady ways that left it feeling safe, warm, and full of life. When they returned, Emily greeted them at the door, smiling genuinely. Sarah hugged her again, tired but happy, and Mark simply nodded, his calm smile reassuring. Dinner that night was cheerful. Sarah shared stories of her trip, and Emily and Mark listened, occasionally chiming in with small comments. The house felt full again, alive with laughter and conversation. Yet Emily felt a quiet gratitude, a deep understanding of the balance that Mark had maintained during her mother's absence. He had chosen integrity over temptation, respect over convenience, and care over personal desire. As the evening settled, Emily found herself sitting in the living room with Mark. The conversation drifted from ordinary topics to life, dreams, and the future. Emily realized that she had changed over the past 2 weeks. She had grown in ways that were subtle but meaningful. She had learned the value of boundaries, the strength and restraint, and the importance of honesty, not just with others, but with herself. Mark had guided her through these lessons without ever forcing them, and she understood the depth of his character now more than ever. Later, as Emily packed a small bag to leave for her own plans in the coming days, Mark handed her an envelope. She paused, surprised. Surprised when's a handwritten note. You're stronger than you think, Kay, and you deserve a love that meets you freely, without fear or confusion. Emily smiled, feeling tears prick her eyes. She folded the note carefully, tucking it into her bag. It was simple, yet it carried everything she needed to hear the care, respect, and guidance that had shaped her understanding of love and boundaries. That night, as Emily lay in bed in her own room, she reflected on the past 2 weeks. She realized that what had grown between her and Mark was not forbidden or harmful. It was trust, understanding, and emotional closeness. He had protected her heart while remaining loyal to her mother, demonstrating the truest form of love, one that cares without taking, that supports without imposing. She felt grateful for his presence, for the lessons he had taught her, and for the gentle way he had guided her through moments of confusion and longing. Mark, meanwhile, moved quietly through the house, checking on small details, making sure everything was in order. He felt a quiet satisfaction, a recognition that his choices had mattered. He had maintained respect for both Emily and Sarah, balancing care with integrity. The house, once silent and tense during Sarah's absence, had returned to its rhythm, but the lessons of those 2 weeks lingered in its walls. The next morning, Emily left for her own journey, carrying the note, the memories, and the understanding that some bonds are defined by what is held back, not what is given freely. She hugged Mark at the door, a genuine warmth passing between them. "Thank you," she said. "For everything." Mark smiled softly. "Take care of yourself," he replied. "And remember, you're stronger than you realize." As Emily walked down the driveway, the sun spilling over the trees, she felt a sense of closure and growth. The house behind her was no longer just a building, it was a place of lessons, safety, and emotional clarity. She knew she would carry the quiet strength of those 2 weeks with her, a reminder of the care, integrity, and emotional honesty that had guided her through a time of uncertainty. And in that understanding, she discovered the truest kind of love, not passionate or overwhelming, steady, respectful, and deeply human. It was a love that healed, guided, and protected. A love that would stay with her forever, quietly shaping the way she approached relationships, trust, and her own heart. Emily smiled as she got into her car, the envelope safely tucked in her bag. The house behind her was alive again with her mother's presence and Mark's calm integrity, but she knew that the lessons, the respect, Kay, and the warmth of those quiet, stormy nights would remain with her forever. The past 2 weeks had changed her subtly but profoundly, and she felt ready to face the world with a new sense of understanding, gratitude, and quiet strength.